So I am recording now.
All right. Well, good morning. Thank you for joining us. And as you know, I'm Kate Huber from Creating Healthy Schools and Communities, and Sarah Whiteway is here also as the Creating Healthy Schools and Communities School Coordinator. Today, we are talking about physical activity in the classroom, the benefits, and how to implement. So all of what we try to do really centers around the whole school, whole child, or whole school, whole community, whole child model of coordinated school health. So you can see all of the various areas in the blue around the diagram. So we're really going to focus on that upper right side, which is physical education or physical activity part of the physical education component. So we really have two objectives today. As I mentioned, we're going to examine the benefits of incorporating physical activity into the classroom and then learn some strategies for doing so. So first, the benefits. So we know that making physical activity part of the classroom increases motivation, decreases behavior problems, and really improves concentration, on-task behaviors, and test scores. And this isn't just one or two research studies that show us that or allude to that. There's decades of research on millions of students, participants that show us that this is true. So how does it really work? Well, when anyone really engages in physical activity, right, some of those immediate benefits, it wakes up their brain, gets them ready to learn. Their brains are awake, they're able to concentrate, right? They can learn better. The long-term benefits, students increase their physical fitness when they're able to concentrate better and learn more, their academic achievement goes up. And when students are doing well in school, that really improves school climate because we know that students that struggle in school also have some behavior issues when that frustration, that anxiety starts to get the best of them. So if we can get everyone functioning at at their potential, then there's less frustration, less behavior issues in the classroom as well. So physical activity really releases very powerful chemicals. These are just three of them: dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. You can see that they all do different things, but when combined, it really improves mood and cognitive function. So looking at some of the benefits of these chemicals, you can see how some of the different chemicals would improve concentration, for example, or they would make it so that there's fewer behavior problems, right? When you are able to control your impulses more, you're able to wait for the teacher to call on you, you're able to wait to go to the bathroom or get that drink of water or say something you shouldn't to the person next to you, right? So all of these things really help to, at the end of the day, improve behavior and academic achievement. When you talk to any principal, those are the two things they want, right? First, they want kids to show up, and then they want them to behave well and do well academically and be happy. So this is an example of the brain and how it works. So Dr. Chuck Hillman from the University of Illinois has done lots of research on the brain. And this is one of my favorite slides. I probably show it in almost every presentation, but you can see the brain on the right has more orange and yellow. That's more brain activity. So just after taking a 20-minute walk, their brains were more engaged. So that's better able to pay attention, delay impulses, all those things that we talked about. We want the students in that right image in our classrooms, right? Because the ones on the left, they're not paying attention. They're getting in trouble, they're struggling. We don't want kids that are struggling. We want kids that are brains are activated and are able to make good decisions. This was a study from Texas, actually, and they studied every student in the state, so millions of students. And what they found was that students who were more fit, they did better academically, they had better attendance and fewer disciplinary incidents. So I also use this slide when I'm talking about the importance of physical education and how important it is for districts to prioritize making sure that they're meeting the state mandates for the number of minutes and for the number of minutes of vigorous to moderate physical activity. So not that they're just going down to the gym and walking around, but they're actually going to the gym and exercising hard, getting their heart rate up, building their fitness level. So does physical activity improve social emotional learning and mental health? What do you think, Lori? Yes, definitely, right? So I'm guessing because you're from Western New York United, you've learned a lot about social emotional learning and the mental
That's
health piece,
basically
right?
my whole job is
Yeah.
social emotional learning.
Exactly. So we know that students and adults, this is sort of the new term now, right? It's the process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions. We have a lot of students who don't know how to manage their emotions. And unfortunately, their parents and caregivers aren't that great at managing their emotions either. So they're not doing a great job at teaching their kids how to manage their emotions because they're struggling with it themselves. So when we look at physical activity in the classroom, you can see some of the opportunities that or the benefits related to the social emotional learning that students get when not just teenagers are active, but when anybody's active. We sleep better, we concentrate better. You know, you've got good relationships, you feel like you belong. When you're able to engage in physical activity, you can go outside and play with friends. You can join a sports team. You can just take a walk, right? So we know that students also have this huge desire, as we all do, to fit in and belong and feel like they've got a group of people to be with. The research really tells us that students who are more active are more likely to have friends and have those positive connections that we all need. So the framework includes 5 competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. This isn't a webinar about social emotional learning, so we're not going to go through all of them, but I want to point them out and direct you to the CASEL.org website if you want to find out more information about it. CASEL is the place to go. So this was another interesting study that I found just around walking. Mental well-being scores were significantly higher for people who exercised on a regular basis. So the more you walk, the better it is. So this could be even something as simple as having a walking class, taking your kids outside for a little bit. It doesn't have to be high energy physical activity, but the more we can get our students up and moving, the better their mental health is going to be. And we know we have a mental health crisis in this country for our students, and we are significantly understaffed in not only the number of school personnel to address them, but the community personnel to address the most serious mental health needs of our students. So exercise is free. It's an incredible preventative and therapeutic method for helping our students. So let's get them up and moving as often as possible. So how do we do it now? Talked a lot about the why. Let's talk about the how. But first, the barriers, because we know that that is the number one thing that I get from teachers. Yeah, that's great, but, right? So there's not enough time in the day, whether it's at the elementary level or the high school level. You have a finite amount of time to teach important content to your students. Excuse me. Again, one of the big things that research shows is because students are able to be more on task and to concentrate and their brains are more awake, teachers are able to teach the same content that would normally take 30 to 40 minutes in 25 minutes because there's fewer discipline problems, right? Think about the number of times or the number of minutes that teachers are spending redirecting students, making sure that they know what page they're on. Remember, I said to turn to page 72. When students are paying attention, you naturally save time and you don't have to teach the same concepts as often because they're getting it. So it's actually an incredible return on investment. There's studies in Naperville, Illinois, that showed that academic achievement actually went up when they went to daily PE for every student K through 12. So even though they were receiving 45 minutes less instructional time per day, their academic scores went up across the board because their students had better fitness levels because they were engaging in more physical activity. Space doesn't have to be an issue. You can do yoga in your chair. You can jump up and down. You can walk around the classroom. And we're going to talk about some easy ways where space isn't an issue. Ideas. I'm going to give you so many ideas. You're not going to have time to implement them all. You can also go to Pinterest, get lost for days on Pinterest with ideas to get kids up and moving, not just at the elementary level, but the high school as well. And then you say, well, what about those students with special needs? I know I have students who maybe have some physical disabilities or cognitive disabilities, and they're not able to follow along quite as well. There are easy ways to adapt any type of physical activity for students with special needs. And I'll give you some of those ideas as well. I'm also going to share a bunch of resources as well. And confidence. It takes a certain amount of confidence, right, to get up in front of your students and move with them, right? So put on a video. Talk to one of the natural leaders in your class and have them lead it until you can build that confidence as the teacher to get up and lead it with your students. So there's three main ways to incorporate physical activity. Infuse it right into the curriculum, have a set scheduled physical activity break where the idea is just to move their bodies, not anything around academics. Also providing alternative seating for students. So you have to create the atmosphere, whether it is tying it into academics or just having flexible seating, anything in between, you've got to create the atmosphere. If you, as the adult, participate in the movement, your students are significantly more likely to participate as well. Tell your students why physical activity is necessary, why it's important, how it makes you feel better. And don't be afraid to try new activities. Be silly with them, even if you're in the high school or the middle school. Kids love it when their teachers are silly and just real, right? And encourage the students to create and plan the activities. If there's some new dance from some new song that they want to learn and teach their classmates, great. They're up and moving and they're building connections as well. As adults, we need that physical activity as much as the students do. We need that mental break. So if we're engaging in that with them and that role modeling and then talking about how good it made us feel just to take that quick break, they notice, they learn from that and are more likely to then do that on their own when they need a break. So how do we integrate it into the curriculum? Have either of you been trained in Kagan or know what it is?
I've been trained in Playworks,
Okay.
not Kagan. I don't know what Kagan is.
Okay, so Kagan is actually not necessarily related to physical activity. That isn't its purpose. Kagan is really about creating different ways to get kids learning in the classroom. One of the, I guess, benefits is that many of the structures, as they call them, also get kids up and moving. So This one here is an example of stand up, hand up, pair up. So you can see all of the kids are standing up and they've got a hand with someone. So this is just a really simple way to get kids to pair up quickly. And it's not tons and tons of movement, but you're getting them out of their seat. You're getting them talking with people. So the way it works is everyone puts their hand up and you walk around until you find another person with their hand up. You connect with each other. I'm sure this picture was taken pre-COVID, right? With everybody touching each other. But once you find your pair, you put your hand down. And then it's easy for the students to walk around and see who doesn't have a partner yet because their hands are still up. And then you give them a task to talk about. They can stand still or they can stroll around and talk. This is a great thing to do outside. Get your kids outside, let them walk around and stroll as they talk about whatever prompt you're giving them, and then come back together. So here are the directions, basically. So carousel feedback is another one. Teams stand in front of their assigned project, and they basically, we all know the carousel, right? You're walking around, looking at all of the projects, having discussions in front of them with your students. So it's not a lot of high energy physical activity, but any little bit of time that kids are able to stand up out of their desks is physical activity. Walking around the room is physical activity. When they're standing, they're not slouching in their chairs, right? They have to use a certain amount of core strength when they're standing. So even getting them up a little bit is helpful. And what I'm going to do with the Kagan structures is I'm going to create a handout that has all of these in them so that you can use them. And then take off and touch down. This is really about answering questions. So this can be a lot of standing and sitting for the students, which is really great. So take off, meaning stand up, excuse me. Take off if you think we should all have to wear school uniforms. Sit down if you think the Civil War was an important part in US history. Whatever the question is, right? The students basically answer by either standing up or staying seating, sitting down, staying standing. So this can be a lot of up and down for students. And you can make it fun. You could do like rapid fire questions where they're constantly going up and down and up and down and up and down. And then it just becomes silly. But again, it's a great way to get that up and down motion and get their heart rate up. Another one, you can give 2 different prompts. This is great for reviewing content. So you can do true or false or odd or even if you're doing math. So if the statement I'm going to say is true, run in place. If you think it's false, do large arm circles. You can do whatever exercises you want in place of these, but it's just the concept of they're answering with their bodies. Really great way to check for understanding as well, because they're all doing it at the same time. So if you have half the class thinking it's true and half the class thinking it's false, you need to reteach some content, right? Again, same thing with math, odd, even, positive, negative. So just scheduling physical activity breaks is also very important. And these can be something as simple as doing elbow to knee touches, right? We want to make sure that when we're doing physical activity breaks, that we cross that midline. Crossing the midline helps to wake up both sides of the brain to make sure that both sides are really engaged. So that could be something as simple as just twisting back and forth because we're crossing the midline. You can do this in your chair, right? So if you have students that have mobility issues, maybe they're in a wheelchair or they've sprained their ankle, they can still do this type of activity in their seat. You can also have students stand up, but really wanting to make sure that we cross that midline. This is another one, really simple, terrible picture. I apologize. But you're just standing and stretching those back muscles. Again, crossing the midline. Lori and Meredith, give a little stretch. It's early in the morning, stretch it up. Feels good, right? All right. Go Noodle. If you haven't heard of Go Noodle, hopefully you have, but if you haven't, check it out. It is a free website for educators, incredible videos and resources for students to get up and moving. You can see a lot of these have to do with that social emotional learning. So they're getting that physical activity, but also that mental health piece and the social emotional piece as well. Go Noodle was originally designed for elementary students with very silly cartoon, funny songs. And they've really expanded it into a K-12 platform for not only brain breaks, but there's tons of videos that tie physical activity into the curriculum as well. And then this whole Empower series is really amazing as well. Pure Edge, I know I've talked about before when we did the yoga webinar, but again, this is a free program that really is focusing on mindfulness and movement. They intentionally don't use the word yoga because some districts, some communities are very cognizant of not using that word. So yoga and mindfulness are not used in this curriculum. Again, K-12 curriculum, all different kinds of ways to get kids up and moving. This is an example from the Pure Edge curriculum. They give you all of the movements, which is great. So we talked about confidence being a barrier sometimes for students to, or for staff to implement some of these physical activity. This curriculum literally gives you everything. It says, say this, do this. So you don't have to be concerned that you have to be a yogi to take your students through these stretches and exercises. These are two resources that I will send you. One is chair yoga, and then the other is 135 in-school physical activity breaks. So this is an incredible tool that you can just hand the whole packet out to your students. Have them stand up, hand up, pair up, have them go through the packet together and each pick one. And over the course of the next few weeks, every student or pair is going to run one of those brain breaks for the class. So you're giving some of that ownership to them, making them work together. And they're really good K-12. Deep breaths tradition. Breathing is so important, and our kids don't do it enough. When students aren't active, they're not great at taking really good deep breaths. They're shallow breathers. So we can get kids up and moving, improve their breath, improve their fitness levels, but then also doing these breathing activities helps as well. Just calm, right? We have lots of anxiety and stress in our kids right now. Make it a tradition where we just breathe with our students. They need to practice this skill almost every day so that they can use it when they really need it and you're not there with them. And then alternative seating is another great way to get students moving throughout the day. Having multiple options gives students choice. When students have choice, they are more likely to be engaged and giving them that sense of control. So you can see lots of different options here. Again, not great pictures, but flexible seating or standing desks don't have to be expensive. You can see on the right, there's just some low-cost risers that they put underneath the desk. So it allows students to stand. Little tabletop desks on top of them. These are great because students can put them on the floor when they want to sit, put them back up when they want to stand so that they're not permanent structures. And then yoga balls and wobble discs. Yoga balls are amazing. Some students, though, they provide too much wiggle and it's not appropriate for them, right? When you're doing the yoga balls, though, very important, you've got to make sure that you set those classroom expectations and rules for how they're going to be used and follow through with them so that it doesn't become kids just bouncing all over, rolling them around, falling off the balls, because that's the easy way for a teacher to say, well, they don't work. It's just a distraction. I'm going to pull all this flexible seating out of my classroom, rather than being intentional about teaching. This is the process. This is how it works. If you want to be able to use a ball, this is the benefit of it. And if you can't follow that, then you're not going to be able to use the ball for a little while. The wobble discs are filled with air and allow students to wiggle a little bit, but don't have as much movement as the ball. This is a good middle ground for some students. You can also put that wobble disc on the floor and have them move their feet on it or stand on it when doing independent reading. So they still have to engage their core. It still gives them a little bit of movement. So there's lots of different ways that you can use that wobble disc. Bike desks are also amazing. Obviously much more expensive than putting risers under a desk, but this is lots of movement as you are working. And then an under desk elliptical. These are all things that students have, or that schools have purchased with our Creating Healthy Schools and Communities grant dollars. So any type of flexible seating for the most part is allowable under the grant. And that's it. I think I finished with 1 minute to spare. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
No, but thank you so much. That's really great information.
You're welcome. All right. Well, with that, I hope you have a wonderful